I have a question to you. I think occupant behavior must have various aspects, such as just the occupancy, but it can cover, for example, the usage of equipment or the operation of windows and so on. So are you going to develop any overall theory which is useful when we deal with in our research occupant behavior? Do you have any good theoretical framework for occupant behavior?
Yes, absolutely. So subtask 1 is developing theoretical frameworks to look at how do we consider both adaptive triggers, so things like discomfort. How do we incorporate discomfort into models to predict behavior, but also how do we incorporate more like habitual triggers, so things like schedules and activities. So yes, in brief, we are developing such frameworks that build upon past work.
Yeah, thank you. And I think in the history of the thermal comfort research work, they often utilize the laboratory experiment on the response from the subject. But in that situation, the freedom of the behavior, action of the occupants are very much limited, which is quite different from the actual situation in the buildings. So if we consider about appropriate comfortableness of the indoor climate, we have to think about that kind of additional influence of the occupants' freedom of the behavior on their preference of the indoor climate. I mean that the acceptance of the comfortableness of indoor climate in real situation can be a little bit broader than the acceptable range which has been found in the laboratory test. What kind of opinion do you have on that, if you have?
Yes, in Annex 79, we very much come from the perspective that comfort is more than a physiological phenomenon. And so laboratories are great for studying physiological phenomena, but when we consider behavioral aspects and psychological aspects, it becomes much more complex, as you mentioned. And so we have some work looking at appropriate lab, but also field study approaches to capture the complexity of this. And one example that comes to mind is work by Marcel Schweiker and Andreas Wagner, where in their lobster lab, which is at KIT in Karlsruhe, they have the facilities to compare how people behave if they're alone in an office versus if they're with other people. And it turns out when you're with other people, you're much less likely to try to act to improve your comfort. So you're less likely to turn on a fan or open the window, etc. It's not because of the physiology, it's because people feel pressured to not act as much when they're with other people, especially if they don't know them.
Thank you. I don't have any questions from the audience, so I'd like to continue my question a little bit more because I'm very much interested in the behavior of the occupants. You mentioned about occupant behavior, especially at home and in office building. But there are many kinds of buildings, especially commercial building, other than offices. So I feel that there is a serious lack of information on occupant behavior in various kinds of buildings, such as hotel, such as hospital, such as school, restaurants, and supermarket. So to build up the knowledge system, the occupant behavior to cover all buildings, there must be a trial to collect the information. Very much information on the occupant behavior in various kinds of buildings. What kind of opinion do you have?
So we've had this discussion quite extensively, especially at the beginning of Annex 79 and even 66. There's two reasons why we've focused on homes and office buildings. So one, they're probably the most common types of buildings, and so perhaps easier to study. But more importantly, these are, and especially in homes, these are the types of buildings that have the most impact from occupant behavior. So if we consider a restaurant, except for the cooks and the chefs, the actual individual guests do not have very much impact on energy. And arguably it's the same in schools and hospitals. The majority of occupants have very little impact on the energy use. But on the other hand, the building operators have a lot of impact on energy. And so one of the things we've done in Annex 79 is to look at operator behavior. And so the operator probably has many orders of magnitude more impact on energy use than individual occupants. And so for that reason, we've performed some interview studies and various other studies to look at how operators are behaving. That being said, operators are not motivated by the same thing as occupants. So occupants are motivated by comfort and convenience and well-being. Operators are motivated by money and by complaints from people. So it's a very different situation. But thank you for that question. It's excellent.
Okay. There is I got one question from the audience. Liam, can you hear me?
Yeah.
The question is, do you have a resource list for exploring the various comfort types and issues? Do you understand clearly this question? I repeat,
Yes.
do you have a resource list for exploring the various comfort types and issues? This is the question from Björn Oresen, Professor Oresen, I think.
Oh, so an expert. I mean, I think the fact is that there's few resources that try to simultaneously cover all aspects of IEQ. And I suspect if there is one, you probably know better than me. But it's not something we've explicitly tried to develop in Annex 79. The closest thing we have is a set of review articles that look at multi-domain comfort measurement and modeling. If you send me an email, I'll be happy to send you those articles.
And additional question to you is, are you also looking at the effect of feedback to the occupants? It is not so clear to me, but do you understand, Liam?
Yes, I think I understand. So likely the question refers to if we give feedback to occupants about building performance, does it change their behavior? This is largely out of our scope, except in some small cases. But I think it's an important topic, but it's out of Annex 79 scope.
Thank you, Liam. My last question is about the relationship with another TCP, which is for users. Recently, English professor made a new TCP, especially for users. Do you know that? Yeah.
I'm aware of it, yes, but I agree there's interesting overlap. My belief is that TCP is mainly social scientists. I could be mistaken. Our Annex is largely on the technical side, scientists and engineers and some architects. So I think there's wonderful opportunities for collaboration there.
Yeah. I think so. I don't care about the overlap. I mean that it is necessary to collaborate between TCPs. That's my opinion. Thank you, Liam. I think we have only 5 minutes before we should finish this webinar. Before finishing, there was one question from the audience to Annex 72 on embodied energy and CO2 emission. The question is about duration of the Annex 72. I think Annex 72 is very close to the closure of the Annex. Rolf, is that correct?
Yes, we are intending to submit the deliverables, the final reports, early October to the EXCO for final review and to close the Annex in the November meeting this year.
So unfortunately, it is not realistic to join Annex 72 from now. But I think, are you going to finish this kind of activity inside EBC, or do you have any idea for continuation for the rest for the left tasks for embodied energy and carbon? Do you have any idea?
For this question. We are currently, we do have plans and ideas on how to continue or for a follow-up Annex or a follow-up task. And I will present some ideas in the June meeting 3 weeks from now.
It is very much appreciated because before making your knowledge and your know-how part of regulation, there should be further research work on your theme. So you should continue. It should be very much appreciated. Thank you very much, Rolf. So in that case, you will be able to accept new members to the next annexes on embodied energy and carbon. Am I right, Rolf?
Yes, that's true. This will be a new call, and new institutes or organizations may join for the new activity once accepted and approved by the EXCO.
Okay, thank you, Rolf. And my last question, I'd like to check. Yes. My last question is about Annex 74. Annex 74 has been dealing with event like a solar decathlon, which is especially for students, even though they have had much visitors to the event. But in my opinion, that kind of event like a solar decathlon can be utilized in the future to collect much more interest from the society. So Karsten, do you have any perspective how we should continue? We should further develop and we should further scrutinize the possibility of that event to enhance the consciousness of the society for energy performance of building, especially. Do you have any idea, Karsten or Sergio?
Well, I'm not sure if I have understand the question exactly. You say that after the competition now. Exactly what is the question? Sorry.
Okay. Sorry about my complicated question. I mean that at present, solar decathlon event you are concentrated on is especially for students, even though they have a visitors. But that kind of format of event, by utilizing the real experimental house, which is very much easy to be visible for visitors. So by utilizing that kind of event, you can attract much more interest from the society. It is necessary to promote further decarbonized housing technology and building technology. So you must have a perspective how to develop further that kind of format of event to collect much more interest from the society.
Yeah.
That's my question.
Okay.
If you have any suggestions, it will be very much appreciated.
Thank you, Takao. Yes, for sure. It's important to reach more people and as much as possible. In fact, for Solar Decathlon 2022, that, as you know, is organizing the Solar Village just now and will be open to people next week. The idea is to stay with a living lab for 3 years for research purposes with 8 of the houses. So the idea is for 3 years, 8 houses will be open to visit from professionals, public, and so on. And researchers will be working in how to improve these technologies. And other initiatives in which we are working now, not linked to Solar Decathlon, for instance, at my university, is to foster the commitment of the students of the LISA Alliance of Universities. And the idea is to collaborate with Wuppertal University with the students to foster a challenge-based learning about how to improve some specific issues of the performance of the houses. For instance, the passive strategies, the improvement of thermal inertia, and so on. So I fully agree with you that it should be a pity not to take advantage of the interest of Solar Decathlon houses to improve the communication and the awareness of the professionals and the students.
Thank you very much, Sergio.